The Someone You Should Know podcast with Rick Anthony, sponsored by Mesmerize. Repurpose podcast, webinars, and interviews for social media, websites, and email with the help of AI, all thanks to the help of Mesmerize. Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. I am truly thrilled to have today's guest on the podcast because I've known his music and his collaborations for decades, but I haven't known him. He's got a great new album out called Rapture. We're going to feature some music from that. And I would like for you to meet my new friend, Adam Holland. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing great. Nice. Thank you for having me. And thank you for that great introduction.
Oh, no problem at all. First off, I want to talk about humble beginnings. What was your inspiration to pick up the guitar at such a young age?
Well, I have to give my sister the credit. She had a guitar in the house, just like a nylon string acoustic. And as she was a couple of years older than me, and back in the mid-'70s, late '70s, she would, in the mornings, like wake the whole house up with either Steve Miller, Foghat Live, Frampton Comes Alive, Fleetwood Mac, Boston, the Styx, the music of that, the late '70s, Foreigner.
77, 78, yeah, absolutely.
And I'm talking like super loud. I remember hearing like Jungle Love, that like the bells, before Jungle Love, and it goes that alarm type of thing. I'm like, what the hell? So either way. And then, of course, Led Zeppelin and The Who, she would play a lot of that. So those late '70s rock albums were like embedded in my head every morning, which was great. I look back on that and thank you. Well, Bosh, we're playing with, we've played with and are playing this summer with Foghat.
Love them.
And that Foghat Live album is such an influence on my life that every time we play with them, I tell Roger, I'm like, you don't understand how much you know. So she had a guitar, and I just, there's one more song, The Orleans, Still the One.
Still the One, yeah, from 77.
Orleans, that guitar solo, I'm like, wow, that is a crazy guitar solo. It still is. And I started to pick up her guitar and ask for lessons, and I was 11, and the rest is history.
Very good. I had Roger on the show many years ago. He told me the story. One of his tales from the roads that he did was about getting into a hotel about 7 o'clock in the morning. He was tired, and he was basically sitting on his bags that were going in the elevator, but he had no idea that the doors also opened to the back, and wound up falling into the restaurant.
Oh, that's hysterical. That's a good story.
He's a great guy. And that once again, that live version of "I Just Want to Make Love to You," one of my all-time favorites. That was great. That's a great album. And everything you mentioned was all great stuff too during that time frame. Boston's first album, the same time Heart came out.
Right. All those. Every one of those albums that were on AOR Classic Rock Radio now, those were on the playlist of everyday life in the late '70s for high school kids.
All right. Wonderful. I got to ask you, since you started playing the Long Island club circuit while you were still in high school, can you share a couple of memories from that? Because that had to be pretty neat.
Okay. I just was with a guy the other night, a friend of ours who was he's no longer in the band, but he played keyboards with us in our senior year at high school. So during our senior year at high school, I think we were barely old enough to get in the clubs. I don't think we were. But there was a band called Equinox. And I don't even know how we knew them, but they had their equipment stolen. So I don't even know how this all happened, but it did. They asked us, listen, will you play our gigs with us, every one of them, but for a couple of months, we'll borrow your equipment, drums, keyboards, amps, whatever we need. We're like, sure. So in my senior year of high school, probably, that second half of the senior year, which thank God it was, that time in life, we played 3 weeknights, like a Sunday, a Wednesday, and maybe a Thursday. And then literally we would get home at 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'd stop at the bagel place, take a shower, and go to school. So if I tell you, it was not a very productive school time, but it was great, great memories. And,
look where you are now, though. That's just it. As far as just because you didn't learn the Pythagorean theorem doesn't mean that you're going to be...
Right. Well, I still, you know what? It was the end of the senior year, so I had learned what I needed to... It was already at the time where it was okay to, sort of let go a little bit. I had already, I'd been accepted to college. It was okay. The timing did work, thank God. It wasn't like... I wasn't going into my SATs. It was that coasting time, so it was pretty fun.
Okay. After that, you wound up interning at Polygram and Columbia Records. I'm sure that internship provided some interesting moments in your career. What about those?
It did. First of all, what an education. Gerard and myself were like, if we're going to I started as a music major and realized very quickly I'm not going to play in an orchestra. Not that I loved it. It was actually super enjoyable. I'm not going to discredit it. But I knew that this wasn't going to be my career. Like, I don't need to know about being in an orchestra. I wanted to know about the record industry. I wanted to get a record contract. And so Gerard and I got internships. Gerard started out. He opened the door. We asked our colleges, can we, get internships? They're like, sure. We're happy to, they were ecstatic. So we got these internships. We started at Columbia in the video department and then they stuck us wherever they needed us. And we met our managers, that, believe it or not, before we even we met all these people who eventually we worked with, which was wild.
That's amazing.
By the way, we got signed at Columbia later on, which was like, they're like, what are you guys, weren't you an intern here? But that led to an internship at Polygram, where we worked for a very famous publicist called Sherry Ring. And that was in the heyday of Bon Jovi, Rush. I can't even remember who, massive, 80s, mid-80s stuff, 85-ish, I guess, 86. And we learned a lot. I was in the publicity department just literally doing what they told me, making these binders and all these, there was all these names for all these things and reports and so-and-so, Adam, do this. And by the way, at the same time, Valentine was happening and we met people, like we needed a lawyer. We met all these people, attorneys and publicists and all these different people who would later on be crucial in our career. So it was pretty wild. And so from there, I saw an ad in the Village Voice for a real publicity firm. And they're like, we need this, this, and this. I'm like, wow, I do all that. So I ended up getting a real paying job at a place called JLM Public Relations. And they handled Duran Duran, Iggy Pop, Ice House, Howard Jones, and things like that. So I was in the industry working on both sides, but no one knew the other side. I know I had to keep it.
Did you realize this little golden path, this little cobblestone path that you've got is just exactly the way you wanted to go?
Yes, I did that on purpose. It was on purpose. That was by design.
Talk about having the right moves. My goodness gracious. I want to share with you something that is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. 1990. Yes. I'm on the air at Z98 in Guam. My late wife, huge MTV fan. We both watched MTV all the time. She said, there's a band I want you to see. It's called Valentine. And at the time, well, she's always was a huge Steve Perry fan. And back in those days, if you remember, Hugo looked an awful lot like Steve Perry.
I remember. He still. By the way, he still does. And
does he really?
He plays in one of the world's most famous Journey tribute bands because he looks like that. But we'll get into that later. Yes, I do remember.
And I saw the video, and I went to my music director and said, "We have got to play this song," and that was no way. And so I really and truly, every time I had the opportunity, every time I was on the radio, if it was, in the next hour or something like that, the next shift or something like that, I just move it into my shift because I love that song so much. The video was fabulous. Do you remember the video shoot?
I do.
Ali Sheedy was in there. She was another person I've interviewed through the years. I didn't realize that until years later, as far as that she was in that video. But yes. That was a great time frame. What can you tell us about the Valentine days?
Well, first of all, they were as good as you could think. They were classic. I mean, we were young kids with a record contract, making music, being creative, a few bucks in our pocket, working with some of the top people, all the things that I mentioned before. We worked with great managers, producers. It was just a wonderful time. Unfortunately, I mean, the downside was who knew that the times would be changing down the road a few years later. And we changed labels. We got signed to Columbia, but then ended up on Warner Brothers. Still pretty wonderful. And we made the video for Warner Brothers. And even with the ups and downs of the music industry at the time, the 90s coming in, our time in Valentine was pretty amazing. I mean, it was pretty storybook. Like I said, we had done all these internships. Valentine was brewing on the background. We were actually playing Long Island clubs. I think we went to California for a while, got a serious education, came back, and all this time we started writing, demoing, and like kind of textbook the clubs were brewing, our demos were getting better. We had interest from we had real management, real producer, and eventually got a real record deal. So it was like, we did it. Holy shit. It was unbelievable. And they were great times. I mean, of course there were some strange times, the stressful times, changing labels, the ups and downs, an emotional roller coaster, but still I look back with, the picture looks good to me when I look back on it. We were very grateful to have what we had. I would have loved to have been a little more. And, we were in the group with like Firehouse, Warrant, and all those guys at CBS. And then a new president came in and decided that the 90s were coming. It was time to clean out some old stuff. So we didn't quite get the push of those bands. And we feel that we would have had the success of those bands if we were put through the Columbia machine. But having said all that, it was really a great time. And those guys, like you mentioned, Hugo, I still talk to him all the time. Gerard and Craig are still in the Steve Augeri Band. So I see those guys literally every moment. So all good things. What can I say? I look back with gratitude and appreciation.
We are going to include the link to the video of No Way.
Awesome.
And put that down there in the show notes so everyone can check it out. And all the hair back in that day. It was
yes. Oh my God, a lot of hair. That was an important part. That was like an important part of the business, the hair.
I was kidding my dear friends from Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I said, they realize the guys have longer hair than the girls do, and it's still
even now those guys still have long hair. I don't have it. I think that I have a lot of hair, but not quite as long. But no, those days the hair
it was important. Yeah.
By the way, they called us hair farmers. That was another. It was hair bands, but like if you went out and like some people, you travel around the country and like. Girls, I remember saying, "Oh, hair farmers." That they called us hair farmers.
Oh my goodness!
And we had, but you know what? Taking care of the hair was like a serious part of the business. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that was like, we had a woman in California who cut our hair. She used to be from New York. When she moved to California, Santa Monica, literally, we would make like we would in Los Angeles all the time. And, they were like we'd have a day for like hair. Like we'd set up a day at her place and like color, whatever she needed to do, she did it. So it was pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that project was really, really good. But after that, you wound becoming Open Skies because of the label issues and such. The biggest challenge you faced during that transition was what?
So that was an interesting transition. We weren't famous enough that we couldn't, we didn't say, let's change the name, let's change the band, let's do everything. We started out, we had our managers, everyone still stuck with us even during that time during that time in the transition from 80s to 90s. And they were like, let's expand, just try, you're not going to be a grunge band. Just try and rock a little differently. Try different things, grow, expand. And then it wasn't until later on that we were putting out the record, everyone, including ourselves, were like, maybe this isn't Valentine anymore. And we had changed a few members. So it was a strange time for the perception of the band, but as a musical period, it was unbelievable because here we were we had a record deal on RCA, which was another gift. I mean, seriously, just talk about gratitude. We were given another chance. And then we had the label managers, producers were like, listen, you need to just take some time and write and record and write and try everything you never tried before. So talk about a wonderful period. It was unbelievable. I was one of the most enjoyable musical periods of my life. The record, we're proud of that record, and we really are pleased. I love that record. I love that time, and but I think people were like, "Well, is it Valentine?" Because it was slightly confusing for some. But
I can understand that as far as it goes. Valentine, who is this? They sound so much like Valentine.
Right? They're like, isn't that the singer for? People are like, isn't that the singer from? Isn't that Hugo from Valentine? So. Either way, we weren't trying to pull like a trick on anybody, like saying we're new and improved. It just became something else. So,
yeah. And
we wrote a song with the great performer writer Glenn Burtnick, title track "Open Skies," and actually that song, we loved that song, and we're like, wow, what an optimistic feeling that gives you like open. It just sounds optimistic. Well, like that's kind of how we felt. Like we've been given another chance, and that's how the name. Everyone sort of the label. Everyone felt like maybe that's a better way to go than Valentine.
Yeah.
And that's how it happened. It wasn't some charade. It was it happened organically.
Your album, Open Skies, got a lot of airplay at our house because my wife
thank you.
was still following Valentine and Open Skies. She just really and truly loved your stuff, and I wound up getting a lot, I guess, the secondhand stuff.
Understood.
It was great because I did my best to get you guys some airplay.
Thank you.
And it's just, my whole thing, I'm still carrying it on these days here. It has to do with trying to help people out as far as that goes, because
we appreciate that. As musicians, anybody who can, promote, support, and get the story out, we appreciate it. Like this podcast, I appreciate you. I appreciate letting me tell my story, and I got a long history, and thank you for letting me share it.
It's no problem. But we've been talking a while here. We got to play some music. People are saying, stop it, Rick, let's play some music.
Exactly.
The 2024 album is called Rapture. Very well done. What can you tell us about the project?
This came about as a classic sort of COVID baby. I was home. Instagram was our outlet to the world. I started recording these 1-minute little tracks that I would then jam over live, literally sitting where I am right now, just standing up, playing guitar to a backing track. And I started to, I'd never done one of those type of guitar instrumentals. I'd always been like a vocal songwriter, 3 minutes, hook, verse, chorus type of thing. So I never did the long instrumentals. So these little, at the time, Instagram had this 1-minute limit, and I did these 1-minute videos, and many of those, not all of them, carried over it. I reworked them with Gerard Zappa, and we made this record. And that's how it came to be. Then we took our time and wrote some new things, and I worked with some other people and got really a little more. I said, let me just put out an instrumental record, but not such a jamming, guitar geeky record. It is a guitar record, of course, that is my instrument, but the songs are still really kind of pop songs. But there's also a variety of songs. There's some moody things, there's some country stuff, there's some heavy stuff, and there's some just, good old-fashioned poppy stuff.
The first song we're going to feature is one that you co-wrote with Gerard.
Yes.
Two Summer Eyes. What's the backstory?
This is a song. This is a Gerard. Gerard, at this time, we were again home. Here we were. He started really experimenting with a lot of loop-based music, which was really good for instrumental type stuff. And there was many of them. There's a couple. This one, I think there's a few of them. Up the Hill, and there's a couple others in there that Gerard had sort of had throughout these loops at me with these like progressions, and I would take them and sort of reshuffle them, and we would go back and forth, and they became these. So that this is a Gerard inspired original riff, and I put that nice melody over the top of it. I heard that, and then it became what it became.
All right, very good. We're going to feature that right now. Two Summer Eyes from Adam Holland, today's podcast guest. Great music from the album Rapture. Adam Holland getting some help from bassist Gerard Zappa on Two Summer Eyes. The album is called Rapture, and we're going to be playing more of that coming up on the podcast. But first, I want to say thanks so much for tuning in to the Someone You Should Know podcast. You can check us out on the World Wide Web at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast.com. If you go there, you can check out our recent news, our archive of more than 170 episodes, and a whole lot more. If you happen to be going there, please do us a favor. Leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. According to Buzzsprout, the service that shares us to all the streaming platforms, we are so very blessed. Over 2,200 cities and 90 countries around the world have streamed our shows, and we do appreciate that. We're going to salute a couple of those cities today: Niles, Michigan; Annapolis Junction, Maryland; St. Petersburg, Florida; and Hounslow, West London. Someone You Should Know podcast. Heard wherever quality streaming audio is available. Hi, it's Rick again for Summarize. Summarize repurposes your content from audio and video into engaging, shareable social posts, email content, summaries, quotes, and more. Hey, it's hard work to create high-quality content from podcasts and video content. Summarize gives you multiple types of content to support your marketing channels, from social media posts and email newsletters to show summaries and a whole lot more. As a matter of fact, if you go there today, you can upload up to 60 minutes for free and find out why I like it so much. Go to summarize.com to learn more. That's SUMMARAIZE.com. Thanks for listening, and now back to our podcast. Thanks for listening. We are speaking to Adam Holland. Adam, during the time frame of your early years, as you worked at JLM Public Relations, you were promoting Duran Duran, Iggy Pop. Mm-hmm. What have you learned? What was the most valuable lesson you learned from that time frame?
That's a good point. That's a great question. You never know who you meet now and where they're going to come into play down the road. So always be alert, polite, give people attention, and that goes sort of in all areas of life. But I learned a lot of people I met during that time, I ended up running into them later, and so that was a lesson I learned. Wow, it was the first time I realized, wow, oh, that's the person. 10 years later, holy crap, I met you from so and so and so and so. So that was my first sort of realization of that. Interesting enough, that was my sort of second world working in the world of public relations. So I knew, and there was a woman there named Kim Kamen who went on to, tremendous record label success later on down the road. At the time, she was a publicist. I was her assistant, and she left there and went to another firm and was working with Kiss. And I begged the label. I said, I don't care. Please, can we hire her for our publicity? And they did it. I was like, oh my God, I think it was something Reynolds. I forgot the name of the firm, but either way, they were the big firm back in the day. I'm like, please. So she was amazing, Kim Kim, and I to this day, grateful for her. Great friend, great person, and great publicist. And she made us look like we had sold like as many records as Warrant, Winger, all those, but we had not. So she was fantastic and was super helpful in our time at Valentine. You really and truly have been blessed with the people that have come down your path. That is just, yes. It's wonderful. And one of those things I always learn: never burn any bridges. You never know. Well, that's what I was saying. Right, that's exactly right. Because the people you read, like all the people from, God, when we worked at Polygram, literally we met our manager Louis Levin. We didn't know he'd be our manager at the time, and we were, so all these people you did something for met. All of a sudden later, they're like, oh, that guy, didn't I meet you somewhere before? So I learned those lessons in that period of time. Yeah, that's amazing. We're going to feature some more music from Rapture. This one is called Tears Of. What is the backstory on this one? This one, the drum groove, I'm not sure what, I came up with the chord progression, and I wanted something really moody. And the drums, and I wanted to start, once I had finished the song, I knew that I liked the way the tribal sort of groove had happened, and I just spaced out sort of, this room, just really kind of, it's not an up-tempo song, it's a groove mid-tempo. And for guitar nerdy stuff, I'm using some single coil pickups, which I love that sound. And I just wanted to, have a nice, it just gave me, I don't know, the chords I came up with were inspired by the drum groove, and then the guitar line was inspired on top of all those things. So amazing. We're going to feature that song right now. From the album Rapture, here's Tears Of, from today's podcast guest, Adam Holland.
That is Tears Of from Adam Holland. Adam is our guest today on the Someone You Should Know podcast. Now, another name that you've worked with is Steve Augeri. Now, I've known Steve Augeri from Tall Stories, and then he went on to replace Steve Perry for a while in Journey.
Yes.
Wild on the Run, we used to play that on the radio.
I love that song. I love that song. We get to play it. I'm like, Steve, when can we play that again? When we go to Europe, we play a lot of Tall Story stuff.
Great stuff there. How did the camaraderie of you two last all these years?
That's a great question. We've been together now 14 years, which is fantastic. So to go way back, Open Skies and Tall Stories both toured with Mr. Big back in the 90s, okay? But by the way, we was like, we weren't together. We were like on and off with touring with Mr. Big. So I'm like, who's this Tall Stories? We knew them, we're like, holy crap, they're phenomenal. So and I loved that song, Wild on the Run, loved it. Mm-hmm. And I knew it back then, that time. So, and they were on Epic at the time. So that was our first introduction. Then he got the gig with Journey, and of course, we're like, holy shit. We all loved that 2001 DVD they'd made in Vegas. And so we knew Augeri. Everyone knew Steve Augeri. We're like, holy shit, the guy's in Journey. And we loved those records, so we were a fan. And then in the early 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, Valentine, I started playing with Hugo in a Journey tribute band because he was like, screw it, I look like the guy, let's just play in a band. So we played in this band, and once Hugo and I started playing together, then people were like, oh, is Valentine playing? And we got invited to play these great festivals called Firefest over in Nottingham, England. And there were a lot of 80s bands. Taiketo we played with Tall Stories. So there we ran into Steve one or two times and just started talking. He's like, I'd like to do something with the Journey catalog. I need a band. And either way, it all worked out that the Valentine guys became the Steve Augeri Band.
I just love it. It's great stuff. Great stuff there. And
he's a great guy. And by the way, you pronounce his name right. Thank you for that.
Yeah. My wife was the one. My late wife was the one that knew everything about anything that had to do with Journey.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and that's just it as far as that goes. And I've had a chance to talk to Neil, and I've talked to Greg Raleigh years ago
nice.
too. And still one of my favorite bands. Now that she's passed it, anytime I hear a Journey song, I know she's looking down on me.
Oh, that's wonderful. I will think of that. It's a great story. It's beautiful.
Very good. Now, you guys are doing a lot of touring. You've got some dates already for July and such. Any ideas what's going on for the rest of 2024?
Yes, we have. I could look at the calendar. I could tell you we have dates through May, starting next 2 weeks. May 2nd, we go. I mean, we're all over the place. May, June, July, very busy in July, busy in August. I think we're going to go to Europe in September, South America, October. And that's probably it. Then that's our usual. We always do a South America run. We try and go to Europe at least. We get invited. We're not like we tour. We get invited to one or two shows over there. And the summer is really great. We're all over the Midwest this summer.
Awesome. Very good. I will include all the links to that in the show notes so you can follow exactly where Adam and Steve Augeri Band is going to be. And
I post I'll post my dates on my Adam Holland music.com and my Instagram. I will, at the end of the show, we'll give you all that. So just so you know, I'll post all those dates I just mentioned. There are quite a few. We're playing with Kansas. We're playing with Foghat. We're playing a really cool thing in Branson, Missouri called Retrofest. I mean, it's a Quiet Riot, Vince Neil, Steve Piercy, I think Jesus Jones, I think Tiffany, all kinds of 80s stuff. It's a multi-day event in Branson, Missouri. So that's going to be a fun one. And like I said, we're playing a few times with Foghat at a couple of little festivals. We're playing with Kansas, I think, one or two times. So, yeah, some really cool shows. And Steve, in between all those, Steve does his, things with Bret Michaels. He does things with Lou Gramm. So he's having a really busy year. We're busy and he's super busy.
So very good. This next feature has to do with touring. It's called Tales from the Road. This is my personal favorite. We've been doing for eons now. This is those infamous road stories where things didn't go quite as planned. Adam,
I have
touring
no
forever
problem.
and ever. What would be your Spinal Tap moment on Tales from the Road?
Well, the one that comes to mind, there's always the fun, like, where are we? Again, but seriously, in the movie, they're like, getting to the stage. There are always those, like, you're in a hallway, like, where is the stage door? So we've had plenty of those. The one that comes to mind the most, so the first time we played Firefest, 2000, I guess, I'm not sure if it was 6 or 7. I honestly don't remember. I think it was one of those years. But we played Firefest, and we didn't have any road crew with us. It was like a really like get on and no sound check, get on, get off, like really hectic. Looking back, we went the second time, I'm like, okay, I'm a little wiser. But the first time, and by the way, I had a converter for my amps and everything, right? And so here we are about to go on, literally, we're behind stage, and Mike Morales, the drummer at the time with us in Valentine, is over to my left, and I'm behind the amps, little behind like 3 Marshall stacked up so no one could see me, and I have my little converter, and I plug it in. I got shocked. Thrown backwards like a cartoon, like smoke, like literally rings around, Wile E. Coyote rings around my head. Mike Morales, thank God he was there. He's the only person to witness it. He's like, holy but I didn't just blow out the fuse of the amp. I took out the whole building.
No.
Okay, so they're like, what the hell? Like, who's... And then people are like freaking out because they're like, what the... they were pissed. I'm like, okay, meanwhile, I'm like, my hair looked like Albert Einstein. I looked like Don Kidd, whatever. Smoke coming out of my, literally like Back to the Future, looking, I'm like, I was rattled. I was not like, it really shook me. I wasn't even joking.
Yeah.
So then I had to play, but then I had to get it together. They're like, what the fuck are you? And everyone's screaming at me. They got it all together. Thank God there was a pause because I had to recompose myself. Somehow it all came together and I played the gig, but that was like, wow, I almost didn't play the gig. That's the one that comes to mind. There's always a lot of silly ones and stupid ones and things like that, but that one comes to mind. Amazing. Off the top of my head.
Amazing. Love those stories. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that with us. I appreciate that. Now we're going to wrap up the show with another one of my favorites from Rapture, Idol Worship. What is the story on this great song?
Great. That's, the Idol Worship comes from, it's like a Billy Idol kind of inspired Steve Stevens theme. It's kind of a little bit of Joe Satriani. And this one I wrote it myself, but I worked on it, and it was produced by 2 really great guys, super talented guys, a guy named Mark Cimino and a guy named John Birchie. They both play in a band called the Shelter Dogs that has multiple records, but Mark Cimino, he's one of these guys when you don't know him, but he was Steve Vai's right-hand man for about a decade, mid-'80s to mid-'90s. Toured with him, wrote with him, did his studio, and then they all played with Devin Townsend. So Devin Townsend is also plays in that band, Shelter Dogs. John Birchie is one of them. He's a Nashville guy, a New York guy, tremendous writer, producer, and also a world-class luthier. So those 2 guys, I handed that song over to them to mix and produce, and they added all kinds of cool stuff and threw some tracks down on it themselves, and it came out great. It had a it's almost like a Satriani kind of vibe with that Steve Stevens feel to it.
Very
so
good.
that's why the Idol, that's the name, Idol Worship. Billy, it's Billy Idol.
Very good, very good. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got all the information you're going to need to follow him, to buy his music and such, to find out where Steve Augeri Band is playing in the show notes. Make sure you check those out. Adam, it has been an absolute treat to have you on the podcast here. I am
so likewise.
We connected after so many years, It's like, of knowing your stuff, it's finally get a chance to meet the man.
Well, I appreciate that. When you reached out to me, I was like, oh, wow, he knows who I am. That's so cool. So I appreciate you having me on, letting me talk about my past, my present, and future. And on behalf of most musicians, I say thank you, because it's important for us to do these type of things. And it's when you get the opportunity to do it, especially on this type of format. So I say thank you to you.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.